kick objective 16 off with our new piece for September. Alright, here we go. You can do it. We're going to go somewhat slow. By the end of the month, we're going to do it really fast. So this is going to be slow. So 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet. Pretty good. Ricky did a good job over here with that. So you got it. She didn't even practice it, but she busted it out pretty good.
So easy.
Alright, here we go. Objective 16. Word problems, multiply or divide fractions. Up until now, we've done some word problems with some fractions, and you've always had to multiply. But a couple of times you're going to have to divide, and the thing is you're going to have to learn when to multiply or divide. So I want to kind of talk you through. Sometimes we're going to see on this first page, you'll multiply once and you'll divide once. Let's look at the situation. Now, if we read it, it says, to finish building cabinets, a carpenter needs to cut a piece of wood that's 19, or to cut pieces of wood that is 19 1/8 inches long. The carpenter is going to cut the pieces from a board that is 114 3/4 inches long. What is the greatest number of pieces that the carpenter will be able to cut for the cabinets? Now, on this example, I guess I should say meow. Now, on this example, the carpenter is going to take a long board. How long is the board that the carpenter has? Like, we haven't cut it yet. How long is that big old board? 114 3/4. Now, that's how big it is. He has a big long board, and he's going to take that board, and he's going to cut it into smaller boards. Notice this sentence right here. Underline whenever, because this sentence is big for this objective.
The sentence or the word?
That's just the start of the sentence right here. This sentence is big. Whenever you take something big, and you are going to divide it up into something of equal smaller sizes. So whenever you are dividing something large into equal smaller size pieces, you will use division. In this problem, this carpenter has this big long board, and he's not chopping it up randomly. He wants to take this big long board and cut it into equal pieces that are how big?
19 1/8.
19 1/8. So he has a board that's this big, and he wants to cut it into smaller boards that are this big. So when this is a case of taking something big and dividing it up into equal smaller pieces. So when that happens, you're going to use what?
Division.
Division. So on this problem, use division. Take the big long board, which is how long again?
1/14 3/4.
Put that in your calculator. 114 3/4.
I already got it.
114 3/4 right there. And then divide sign. We're dividing this big board up into smaller boards that are how big?
19 1/8.
19 1/8.
And you get 6.
Yeah, and sometimes it'll come out equal and sometimes it won't. But in this case, when you hit enter, it'll tell you that you will get exactly 6. And so the answer is exactly 6. So 19 1/8 gives you exactly 6 pieces. Now, 6. Now let's look at the next example. This one's talking about a family's garden. A family's garden covers an area of 23 1/4 meters square. They're using 5/9 of the garden to grow vegetables. How many square meters are being used to grow vegetables? Okay, so the first thing is this family has a garden, right?
Yeah.
They got a big garden. Now area is kind of just like how big the flat surface of the garden is. It's kind of telling you how big it is. So circle this. This is how big the garden is. The question at the bottom though, are we taking this garden and dividing it into a bunch of smaller equal sections? Is that what this story is talking about?
Yes.
A bunch of smaller equal sections though?
No.
Yeah. They're just cutting it somehow. They got a garden and they're going to go this much for vegetables and this much for flowers or whatever else. So they're not going into equal sections. So if that's not the case, so are we dividing the garden up into smaller equal sections?
We're multiplying.
No. We might be dividing it up. We might be cutting it into a couple different spaces, but nobody said let's like take every 5 square meters and make like different sections for tomato plants. That's not what we're doing. You just have a garden, this much for vegetables, this much for tomatoes. It's not equal sections. So what we're going to use is multiply.
Yeah.
We're going to multiply, not divide. Meow. So unless you're making equal sections, multiply. Most of the time, it's multiply. So let's take, how big is that garden?
23 1/4 to the second power.
Okay, yeah, on that, On the 23 and 1/4, it says meter squared, or what is it?
Yeah.
On the meter squared is just the units, so you don't have to put the square in here. This is the area. It's in, the units it's in is meters squared. Now we're going to take it and we are going to multiply by, how much are we going to use for vegetables?
5/9.
5/9. There we go. Not dividing it, we're multiplying it. You hit enter. Now it
You
probably,
have to convert it.
it'll be this is improper.
Convert it.
And let's convert it and you will get a mix because all your answer choices here are mixed.
You get 12 and 11 over
12 and 11 twelfths. Now on this page, we had two examples on this page. One where the carpenter took a big board and then he cut it into like 19-inch smaller boards. And the other one where a family had a garden and then they just decided so much for vegetables and so much for everything else. How did we know which one we were going to divide? One of them was division and one of them was multiplication. How did we know which one was going to be division?
It said it.
Now, but how are you going to know? If these two problems pop up back to back, how are you going to know which one is division and which one's multiplication?
Because
I guess
in
keywords.
division, they want, like, say, we were working on a garden division, would be like sections and all that.
Well, if you read about how are we going to know what sign to use, though?
Equal sections.
Equal sections. Equal sections. If you're cutting into equal sections, you got a board, cut into equal sections, divide. You got a garden, you're not cutting it into equal sections, then multiply. So let's look at the next one and see what it says. This is a woman driving to work. So this is our last example. I think that ends it. A woman drives to work. Now, she drives 25.5 miles to work each day, and she is going to stop for coffee 3/8 of the way to work. How far does the woman drive before she stops for coffee? Now, I need to know if I'm going to use multiplication or division.
Multiplication.
First thing though, all right, on this example, the woman's driving to work. How many miles is her drive to work?
25 and a half.
25.5.
25.5. The question asks how long she is going to be stopping for coffee. So what's wrong with answer C and D? How long does she drive before she stops for coffee? What's wrong with answer C? How long is her drive to work?
25.5.
So why would she be going 68 miles to stop for coffee? That one doesn't make any sense. The other one, actually, I guess it's not C and D. It's C and A that have a problem, right?
Yeah.
D is perfectly fine. So I'll have to fix that in a minute. What's wrong with A?
She
That's a
has,
slightly smaller number.
Yeah, it's pretty much like she made it all the way to work, and like the coffee was at work. Because if she's going 25.5 and she's going 25.8, then she'd be basically stopping. So these are too big. These numbers are too big. All right, to find this exact answer,
you divide.
we need to multiply or divide those fractions. Ask yourself though, the big question, and Jacob said it a second ago, but I want to know why. Do we multiply or divide here? Am I taking the total length of this woman's trip and dividing it into equal sections? She's going to stop for coffee like every third mile or something like that. Am I dividing the total length for this woman's drive into smaller sections?
No.
No. So then I probably shouldn't use what?
Division.
Should not use division.
Told you.
So do not divide. We need to multiply. If I've got her drive and I'm not taking it, I'm not saying she's going to stop every 3 miles. That would be equal sections. On her drive, she had to stop every 3 miles because there were stoplights or there were police checkpoints or something. That would be equal. But this is just saying she's stopping 3/8 of the way on her trip. And then where does she stop for coffee? So to multiply, start by putting her trip length. How big is that?
25.5 miles.
25.5. Let me zoom in on here. 25.5.
Or
Multiply. Multiply by, what's the fraction where she's going to stop for coffee? 3/8.
Equals 9
Equals, and I bet we get a improper that we got to fix.
You gotta convert it.
Yeah. 25.5 times 3/8. Improper. Make sure we know what buttons to push to convert this.
Second, and then the N over D button.
This
Oh,
one.
no, sorry, it's the one right
That
next
one?
to it.
Yeah, it's that one with the double arrows in the middle.
Yeah.
There we go. 9 and 9/16. Just like that. So after she drives 9 and 9/16, she stops for coffee. She gets her coffee, and then she goes the rest of the way. Follow-up question now. This is not, it's not on here. This is actually not related to these notes. But she stops. She drives this far and stops for coffee. How much further is her drive after she stops for coffee? How would we figure that out first off?
Division.
How we figure? She stops. She drives 9 and 9/16 miles. So here she goes. She's 9 and 9/16 miles. She stops.
You would divide, oh wait, no.
Why are you dividing?
Subtract what from what?
Subtract
Subtract
9
nine,
and
subtract
9/16.
25.5 miles from 9 and 9/16 the hour.
Yeah. And then that'll give you, what will that give you, like 16 or 15 or
15 and 15 over 16.
15 and 15/16?
Yeah.
Something like that. So she drives 9 and 9/16, gets some coffee, and then she drives 15 and 15/16, and she gets to work. So that kind of splits her trip up into those two numbers.
17.
All right, as you're doing these word problems, think multiply 90% of the time. And then that 1 out of 10 times when you have to divide, what are we looking for that's going to tell our brains this problem requires dividing?
Dividing it up into equal sections.
Into equal sections. Dividing it up into equal sections. I have a lot of times I have a long board, divide it up into equal sections. Sometimes I have a bookshelf, and it says I'm going to put a bunch of books that are the same length or the same width on the shelf. That's a bookshelf. How many books? Or if I had like a shelf with like DVDs, I wanted to see how many I could fit. That would be equal sections. So if you're dividing into equal sections, divide every other time, multiply these two fractions. All right, so let's end with that same beat that we started with. Remember, it's going in triplet. And 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet. All right, we got all month to make that better, and then I'll come up with something harder.